Sometimes you take the logic and put it away when you are listening to poetry, and it forces you to go deep.
Yes.
And listen with your heart.
Really
and
listen with your whole heart. Welcome to a new season of Leadership Live podcast, where talented people become extraordinary leaders. I'm Daphne Horowitz, and I'm here to help you cut through the noise and talk about real leadership issues. Down to earth, solid, caring and confident leadership. No theory, no pie in the sky, no frills or fluff. Because this is what the world needs most right now. For you to lead with confidence, clarity and impact so that you can build a business that builds people, grows profit and makes a difference. Today, you're in for a treat. This podcast episode is a journey. We have a special guest who is going to take us on the journey of her life, the story of her life and what she's created, which is just so inspiring and wonderful to listen to. And we even have a little surprise at the end. So really, really worth listening right until the end. I am speaking to Babalwa Fatyi. She's a sustainability expert who's also the founder and managing director at Myezo Environmental Management Services. This is an advisory company offering advisory services that promote the protection of natural resources and respect for the planet in line with the universal adopted values as advocated under the UN Sustainable Development Goals, Vision 2030, and South Africa National Development Plan. She shares with us her fascinating story of growing up in a rural village where becoming a scientist was something that she didn't even think about because there were no laboratories around her. She went to school after collecting wood for the fire. Everything was about nature. Everything was about bringing everything together. And even when her science teachers spoke about test tubes and experiments, she only had to use her imagination to picture what all of this looks like and what it means. And yet it fueled her spark of passion for her surroundings and making her life work about maintaining the natural balance of our environment, our world, our planet. And this is why she does the work that she does today. And you can just hear the huge amount of passion that she has for the work that she does. And together with her incredibly scientific brain, she's also an author and a poet. And so we went from the science to the soul journey of what does it mean to be an authentic leader? How can we give expression to ourselves and that core thing that lies deep within us? She's written a book with her poetry. I think she's written a couple of books actually, but her first one is called Greetings from My Core, which is all about the I see you, who you really are. And to me, that is a gift of a leader when they're able to take a step back and really greet people from their core and connect to other people's core. So we spoke about that, and we spoke about a whole lot of things, the value of stillness, listening and curiosity. And all of this is weaved into her story of growing up where women were at the center of leadership. They were leading the home, their community, and their farms. And when she started coming to the workplace in the city and all of a sudden having a different experience where women needed to be empowered, this actually shocked her because for her, this wasn't the natural way of being. This was a huge surprise because in her words, we don't need to empower women. We need to remind women of their power. And for me, that was the key gem of the interview, which I really, really connect to. So have a listen to this inspiring episode with one special, inspiring woman, Babalwa Fatyi. And as always, for great leadership resources and information about how you can grow yourself as a leader, head on to my website at daphnahorowitz.com and grab yourself a copy of my book, Weekly Habits for Extraordinary Leaders, available on Amazon today. And if you want to be a confident, inspiring leader or CEO with a winning team rallied behind you, where you're able to express your authentic leadership and really see people from your core to their core, then check out our program, the CEO Habits Bootcamp. So just head on to daphnahorovitz.com/CEO Bootcamp where you can get more information. And for now, just sit back and enjoy this episode. I am really excited to have Babalwa Fatyi with us today, who is an incredible woman, inspiring in so many ways. Such a wonderful story that we're going to hear all about today. So thank you for being with us today, Babalwa, and welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Daphna. I'm very glad to be here with you in your show today. Thanks.
You. So I really would like to start with where you come from and where you've grown up. And I know you chose to go and become a scientist when you didn't have any laboratories where you grew up. So tell us, paint the picture in terms of how you grew up and where this fascination and passion for science came.
Oh, yeah. I grew up in the rural village in the Eastern Cape, Mthatha town. The village is called Dugatole and it's within the Jumba Traditional Council. So it's very rural. I grew up collecting firewood from the nearby forest. The forest was called Bazia Forest. We would walk long distances to collect our source of energy, which was the firewood. And we would collect water from the neighboring rivers and walk those long distances to school as well. So nature for me, I grew up being surrounded by nature, but I didn't really know that you can make a career out of it until I got at school and I was told that there's biology, there's the study of interaction of the people with their environment, which they call ecology. And then automatically I just gravitated towards that. I got interested in that. And as part of doing science subjects, I was doing chemistry as part of biological science at the time. Physical science and chemistry were part of biological studies. Yeah, so one just had
fascinated with those.
Yeah, and just imagine, we would imagine a test tube because we didn't have laboratories.
Wow.
So I suppose maybe we'll talk later about my love for poetry, because I was trying to just have that abstract reasoning through having to imagine all these chemical reactions. So the whole interest around the natural sciences comes from the fact that I just grew up being surrounded by nature, and it was just a second nature to me, and it was exciting to realize that I can make a career out of it.
Amazing. So actually you're saying that, I mean, it's fascinating what you're saying, because you're very scientifically minded, so you connected to the sciences immediately, but you had to employ a whole lot of imagination around picturing what this looks like, because you could never actually see it happening in practice in a laboratory.
Yes, we didn't have laboratories, and
so was it your dream to play with this, to experiment, to find a laboratory? How did you think about it?
It at some point you just accept your situation. You think when the teacher stands in front of you and explains how this works, and you try so hard to stretch yourself to see vividly what they are talking about, and it's just the way it is. You don't know that there's anything beyond that. You can actually have this laboratory until you go to high school. I went to St. John's College.
Okay.
At least we had a bit there. It was not a rural school. It was actually in Mthatha. We had different very good science teachers, and we have laboratories. So then that's when I got to really test. And then as I was testing, I got more interested, because science is about really understanding how things work and why they work that way. And you need to be curious to be a scientist. So I had that curiosity, because going back as well to the fact that I grew up surrounded just by nature, there was no much noise. We didn't have streets, we didn't have vehicles. So you spend your time with yourself and wondering, I wonder what's happening behind that mountain. I wonder, why is the stream flowing this way? So there's a lot of silence around you. And then you get to get within yourself and kind of have your own internal conversations in those kind of settings. Even though we're very communal, there's a community all around you, but the other kind of activity that is vibrant that we see in the cities, it doesn't happen like that.
It's
so
amazing.
I got a lot of time with myself.
I love that. And that, you say, prompted the sense of curiosity about you and wanting to discover why and what and why do things work this way and how do things work. And that's amazing, because if I fast forward to today, where you are leading your own business, also in your area of passion, which we'll hear about, but I just want to touch on this stillness and quiet and space and the need to be curious and ask questions. I mean, those are key leadership qualities, which for you is something that developed from a young age, from growing up in a rural area. How do you bring that into your leadership today, or do you bring that into your leadership today?
It has helped a lot, because as you are saying, these are key leadership qualities that sometimes we don't even realize. Because if you are a leader, you need to be able to listen.
Right, to listen, because, to create that space to think, to have that curiosity and to ask questions. And I think growing up in a city with so much noise and activity, and you never actually, really very rarely do you have time to sit quietly and think, or sit quietly and listen.
Yeah, the strategy is there. It's got to be communicated, but we've got to listen to people's views, because you are leading people. You have to listen to them as well, as you are because they are the ones who are helping you to execute your strategy. So that stillness as well, and we are living in such a stressful environment, because things have to go and they have to be delivered and done. Now we are serving clients. There's a whole lot of expectations around you. So it's easier for me to always go back and find the stillness and calmness to be able to process what's going on and come up with strategies and ways of problem solving as well.
So that is what you're saying is so beautiful right now, because you need, and every leader needs to step back from the situation and the chaos and the challenge and the activity that is very, very normal and natural in a business environment, and to find that stillness to really think. Because that's how you come up with the strategies, creative solutions, different ideas. That's where the richness comes from. And you've almost got it internally built in your ability to withdraw, take a step back, and create that space to think. Amazing.
Yeah, it's almost like an instinct. It's those things, as you are saying, kind of built in. But it's those things, if you are not self-aware as well, you would not know how to pull it out and make it work for you in a certain environment.
Exactly. I think what you're saying there is spot on. It's self-awareness, because you can't withdraw at any moment. Sorry, I would need, it's that self-awareness of when is it important to actually step back and do that, give yourself some space. When is it important to actually be with your people?
Yes, that's
okay. So I want to go back to your growing up as well, because I know that there's some women who really influenced and shaped your way of thinking and what you're creating. So tell us about those women in your life, and why were they so important to you in terms of teaching you the power of unity? And tell us your story.
Okay. As I said, I grew up in a village, and this village was run mostly by women.
Amazing.
The reason being, men, because of industrialization and urbanization, they had to go seek for jobs in the cities. And we had a system whereby it was thereby at the time they would come and think it was recruitment and get all the men who were fit to work, take them to the Transvaal at the time to work in the mines. Then this led to this dynamic of every second homestead, there was only a woman who was left, because women were, at that time, they were not being sent to school, they were not educated, so they wouldn't even have the minimum kind of education levels or the skills that would incorporate them into the workforce. And we know there was issues of inequality as well. So women would be at home looking after the children, which was a good thing, because then the family structure, the family unit would continue. Then I was also in that village that was run by women. And in my own household, there was my grandmother, because my mother was working in Mthatha in the city. Okay. And then there was my uncle's wife. So there's these three women. They are playing different roles. My mother is bringing the financial resources so that we can all get by. My uncle is in the mines, right? And then his wife is here and learning how to be a mature woman. And my grandmother is playing that role of grooming her. And so she's within the same homestead. My grandmother is the wisdom, is the matriarch in the household, teaching us about the value systems, how to exist within this community, within this society, so that when we step out, we can be members now of the entire society and part of our country as effective individuals. So they just stepped into this role seamlessly. You have the woman who's working and coming in weekends, bringing financial resources. My school fees are being paid for. You have the grandmother who's ensuring that we understand our roots, our heritage, and the value systems of how to be authentic wherever you are. Now we talk about authentic leadership. At that time, we didn't know, but he was teaching us to be true to ourselves, understand our background, and go out there and serve wherever we were as authentic people who were grounded and knew who we were. And then there's this youngster, the Makoti, the wife to my uncle, who still has the energy. When the uncle sends money, she sees to it that she organizes the cultivation of the mealie fields. We had livestock. So she's the one at the forefront of this and teaching us how to do the physical housework and house chores, going with her to the river, carrying the water, being taught about all those dynamics. So I would only see male figures maybe once a year when they came during Christmas and bring that vibrancy. So with that, when I came into the workspace and I'm told that women have to be empowered, I'm like, they've always been empowered. Maybe we just need to remind them of their power that they have within them, because they ran households. Without them, we wouldn't have products like myself sitting here, because they were the ones making sure that the whole societal system was operational in those days. I love what you're saying.
Wow, you said maybe we just need to remind them of their power because it's there, and that is just beautiful. Yeah. And growing up with such huge women influence, that actually you saw women can do everything. They're the wise guide and mentor, the person who runs the farm with livestock and mealie fields and all of that. And then, I'm sorry for listeners who are not from South Africa, mealie is corn, just so that we know.
Yes, corn.
Thank you. But having these influences, and you actually are saying you grew up with an example of you can do anything, you can achieve anything that you want. You didn't need to be empowered in a workplace.
Yes, that was that. But as I was saying before, it comes so naturally that you don't know how to define it. But now when we are part of the bigger whole, where we are developing strategies for our country or helping our government to execute and implement these policies and these strategies, these laws, you get to realize that, oh, yeah, there's inequality and our women are the marginalized. But how did that come to be?
How did that happen? So what was your first experience of that? Can you share? When did you first realize, because you came with this idea, we can do anything, we've been doing everything. And what was your first experience of this realization that actually, maybe it's not like that in different parts of our existence, of our world?
You first realize it when the varsity, it was not as that strong because, I mean, you just study and the lecturers, there will be fairness, you get your mark. It was in the workplace where you start, because nature, I grew up surrounded by it, and then I adopted it as a career. It was natural sciences, and at that time now we call it environmental sciences. It was still evolving, because in terms of the industry itself, there was no much requirement to take care of nature. What was driven was the economy and the financial benefits. There is a diamond, so you go and dig. These laws, like now, no, guys, we need to rehabilitate. We need to, you need to get a license. National Environmental Management Act that we're working with now is of 1998. And when I started, it was the Act of 1989, Environmental Conservation Act. So I'm just painting a picture of the industry that I chose, and how at that time it was relatively a new field. And you are a woman, you are working, who are the developers? Mostly are engineers. And who are the engineering teams? Mostly male-dominated sector. So you need to tell them that, before we do this, there's a fatal flaw. Did you see that wetland? Wetland are this important in our country. You cannot do this there. And they see the mineral that they want to extract. So you kind of feel like you're not being listened to. You start to realize what is going on here, because we grew up being women and we're listening to each other and we're taking each other's inputs and respecting each other. So the workplace was the first time when I first realized it. I started working in 1999.
I'm interrupting this episode to share an absolutely wonderful free leadership toolkit I've created, and I want you to go and get it. So if you're a CEO and you're great at what you do, but you're frustrated because you're constantly chasing deliverables or putting out fires, and you know you can be better by building leadership habits to become a confident, inspiring CEO with a top-performing team, then go and grab your free leadership toolkit and training at daphnahorovitz.com/leadership toolkit. It's just a matter of creating leadership habits that serve you, your business, and your team to drive the results you want to see. I will show you how in this free training. So go and get it now at daphnahorovitz.com/leadership toolkit. And if you're tired of working those crazy hours, shouldering responsibility for all the things, with your team just not stepping up enough, here's what you need: the CEO Habits Bootcamp. If you're ready to apply to join the CEO Bootcamp, head on to daphnahorovitz.com/CEO Bootcamp. I can't wait to see what that will do for your leadership and your business results. And remember, once you make it a habit, it doesn't take that much time. Now, back to the show. Wow. Okay, so tell us now about the work that you do, because you're the founder of a business that really focuses on environmental issues and making sure that environmental sustainability. So tell us about your passion for that, and you know, why you chose this path, and what brought you to where you are today.
Environmental and Myezo Environmental Management Services, we see ourselves as stewards of our natural resources. It's about the natural capital. It's the realization that everything that we do as we're driving and pushing development, it depends on the biosphere, because that's the ecosystem that provides. We need the water. We need, before you get that mining authorization or mining right, you need to have a water use license, or some people would call them water rights. So if there's no balance, you just have the mineral and the water resources are polluted, or you don't have sufficient quantity of water to enable you to do what you are doing, because you were not conserving it as a country. then there's no balance there. So our biosphere is kind of the driving force behind our own economy. And then with that, once we have the thriving economy, then we are able to realize this Sustainable Development Goal, United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which we call as the World Vision 2030, where we say in 2030, we don't want to see any poverty, any hunger. We want not to see any inequality, gender inequality, and people must have good health care. All those is part of a thriving society, and that is enhanced only when the economy is prospering in a sustainable manner, whereby we take care of the biosphere, which is serving and enabling us to do all this development. So I saw ourselves as stewards, that we go out there and help the developers so that they are consciously reminded that we should be responsible stewards, taking care of that which feeds us, which is our environment, our natural capital, if you want to use that, the King for terminology in terms of governance, because that is the capital. We normally focus on other forms of capital, financial capital, intellectual capital, but natural capital is the essence of sustainable development.
Yeah, and if you just do what we do in terms of whatever business we're creating without taking into account that natural balance and the natural capital, we actually land up destroying whatever it is that we're trying to achieve in the first place.
You said it all.
Awesome. And I love, I just can get such your sense of passion for the work that you do. And I think it just blends so beautifully with your story of where you grew up and just being part of nature. And that was part of your life, growing up in a place where you went to collect wood for firewood and, you know, doing all of that, just living with the earth and living with nature. And that, I imagine, is what fuels your sense of passion for what you do today.
Definitely, that's what fuels it. And just going back to there, it also triggered in me the love for what we call now indigenous knowledge, because I was surrounded by all these people who were and conversationists in their own right, because they knew, you mentioned that we mustn't disturb that sense of balance. They knew that if you disturb here, we depend on this water. Therefore, if you pollute it, where are we going to drink? So they were kind of environmentalists before even they knew the term.
Natural, intuitively. Again, you talk about that intuitive place of what we know is right for us, for the world, for the environment, for the people. Yes. Amazing. Okay, so now I'd love to hear, how did poetry come into this? Because in addition to everything that you do on the environmental sustainability side and the business that you run, you write poetry. So tell us about that. How did that happen?
The poetry, it came with me just wanting to take care of my soul. You see, there's so much noise. We are intellectually stimulated doing the business. And we talk about emotional intelligence as well, but we don't have the time to be still and really get into that point where we can find our core and from which then we can provide this authentic leadership that we talk about now. We understand now with more women coming into the workspace, it has been proven that empathy is a key component of emotional intelligence. Otherwise, you just do not listen to people who have aggrieved people, and we have all the other social ills and situations that we deal with that are hindering the progress in terms of economic growth. So with that, then it was the realization that there is the physical me, there is the spiritual me, and the soul me. And if it's important for me to emerge or to show up into the world as the real me that is not conflicted, I need to listen to the voices to myself. And as part of that, I need to be able to to observe and see how my colleagues are doing certain things and what might be driving those behaviors, and make that analysis and then present it out there. My first book is called Greetings from My Core. The reason why I was saying greetings is to acknowledge you. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. I see you, and as you are reading my inner conflict, my inner revelations, there's a sentence or line here that might resonate with you, because they are universal value systems that bind us. I must say my poetry as well is about those value systems. I write a lot about sustainability as well, because that's who I am.
I love that. But what you're saying is poetry gives you, or the way I'm understanding what you're saying, is that poetry gives you that expression for the authentic you, the who you are, is expressed through this poetry, and everything that you experience, whether it's your work or your life, it's all part of that authentic leadership. And I think if we had to, each of us, step back and say, as a leader, and I want to be the real me, and I want to be authentic, and I want to give expression to that, what would give expression to me as an authentic leader, to the real me, to who I am? And connecting that with the title of your book, Greetings from My Core. I mean, that is such a deep greeting, to be able to greet each other from our core. Then that is when we really, really see each other, and we say, I see you for who you are. You're a leader. Say who you are, express it. And my question to everyone listening is, how do you express your authentic leadership? In what way do you do it? It could be at work. It could be at home, it could be in your community, it could be when you're alone, but there is something about you that is your sense of who you are as an authentic leader that you can give expression to, and maybe think about that. Is it being expressed, and how are you expressing that? Because that's when we really get to show up as our true selves.
Profound. Yeah, that's exactly where I came from with the whole poetry side, and I'm using it to just as a sober nudge, maybe into our nucleus, our inner selves, to say, is that the way we should be doing it? Can you consider a different way, perhaps? Because it moves hearts. Sometimes you take the logic and put it away when you are listening to poetry, and it forces you to go deep and listen with your heart.
Really
and
listen with your whole heart. Absolutely. And I just love that, because I think just that you're a scientist and you have this deep soul-moving passion as well, and you combine that in your life, and we all have those elements. None of us are black or white or this or that, or 0 or 1. We are all part of everything, and we're actually all connected. So if we can sometimes not be so rigid in our thinking, be a little bit more flexible and allow ourselves to express who we are inside without being fearful of how it will be seen. Or because I can imagine, if you're a scientist, we put you in a certain box. This is what you look like. This is what a scientist looks like. And then you add this dimension of poetry, and for other people can be different things, but bring all of who you are into your leadership, your work, and your life, because that just creates layers of depth and beauty and joy and passion and purpose.
You mentioned just now that we are all interconnected. I am a vice chairperson of Ladies of All Nations International, which was founded by Professor Caroline Makaka. It's UK-based organization, but it's got representation across 150 countries. It's all these women to say, let us use our cultural diversity. Let us just see each other and bring that sisterhood that is going to enable us to serve our world as a collective, as a authentic people. It doesn't matter where you come from. Celebrate each other's cultural diversity and learn from each other. So we are very much interconnected. Thank you so much for having me here and letting me share my story, because sometimes you might think, what's the big deal about me growing up in Jumba Traditional Council? But But now when we're talking about the social capital as well, where you cannot do development without speaking to the people who are going to be impacted by those same developments, it's coming out handy now that we need to do community engagements and consultations. That's what one grew up being surrounded with, whereby there's this judicial system where you have to go and report to the chief, and the chief allocates the land. We talk now about this, the Spatial Planning and Land Use Management Act. These things now, they start to make sense. So all of us, there are elements of our being in terms of how we even instinctively grew up that we can bring on the table. I suppose that's where it takes us sometimes to recognition of prior learning, because there are people we can bring on these boards that didn't necessarily go to school, but they know how to do consultations and community engagements, and they can advise on that aspect of ECG, environment, social, and governance components of organizations.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I think we've come to the end of our time together, and this was a beautiful, rich, soul-enriching conversation, I feel. But I know that I did ask you, and you said yes, and that you'd share a piece of your poetry with us. So I'm really looking forward to hearing that.
Thank you so much, Daphne. Thank you so much. Because in South Africa, it is a woman's month.
Yes,
9th of August was the Women's Day. Yes. I just want to dedicate this to women, reminding them of how strong they are. I will just start by saying, you have crossed many brooks and streams, walked on dusty roads, on scorching sunny days, tasted your own salty sweat. Seasonal August winds have threatened to blow your tiny frame, of course, but you have stood. Now in South Africa, in this climatic region, it makes sense why August would be called your month, to reflect on the essence of your strength, to stand even with blowing winds. You have become that woman. You are those women. You have seen storms and rumbling thunder from the sky with shattering lightning. Physical storms have threatened to blow you, of course. Tornadoes which came as if daring your soul to stand or flight, but you stood to fight. You have become such women. That's how I would just like to end it, that woman, you have the power within yourselves.
Beautiful. And I think it just ties into that strong statement that you said earlier. We don't need to empower women. We need to remind them how powerful they are.
Thank you so much, Dr.
Thank you, Babalwa.
Thank you.
This wraps up another episode of Leadership Live. Thank you for joining us today. And now let's continue the conversation. Do you have any questions, comments, or suggestions? Connect with me on LinkedIn, or head on to my website at daphnahorovitz.com, where you can download a free sample of my new book, Weekly Habits for Extraordinary Leaders. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to share it with a friend so that I can continue to reach and support leaders just like you. So tune in next week to Leadership Live, where talented people become extraordinary leaders.